What's up, guys? Welcome to Operation B, the podcast. I am your host, Jamie Thurber, and I am here to take you on a journey of deepening, of expansion, of understanding more about who you are and why you're here and how to operate in an optimal way that allows you to do what you want to do, feel how you want to feel, take care of yourself truly, and support everything that your heart desires. Hey guys, welcome back to an episode of Operation B. So we're doing things a little differently today. As I started exploring the idea of bringing guests into the show and adding some different types of segments here, I was given the suggestion to do some recaps, kind of like a reflection back on some of the old episodes. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to play some clips from 2020, so 5 years ago. As you'll see, I'm in my old apartment. I've long hair. I'm just very different. And so I want to be able to point out, I think when we talk about the shift between Operation B and Operation Do, and from when we had it as the Lifestyle Creation Podcast, there's less of a separation than I think a lot of people realize. Yes, there was a lot more like hustle in the very early on episodes, but 5 years ago, that was when I think about that, I'm like, wow, that was actually a pretty long time ago. And a lot of this stuff was already part of what I practice. It was just different. It was a different embodiment than I now know it to be. And so those are the things I think we're going to find out. But let's go in together. I actually started to watch and write notes, and I thought, nope, we're just going to go in raw together, and I'll see what comes up. So let's give this a watch. So this is one of my favorite episodes. It's called Why We Practice. I actually send people to this episode still to this day. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm super happy to have you here with me, wherever you are in the world, whatever day it is. I hope that you're having a good one. I do love that mic. If not, take a minute, take cool. A couple deep breaths, regroup, refocus, maybe put on your favorite song and rock out. Something that hasn't changed is I definitely have entirely too many words. But I remember this was when I first started the practice of asking you to breathe with me and release tension out of your body with me through episodes. So I remember this is one of the first times that I did that, because I always do that before I hit record. So I was like, why don't I just do it on camera with you? Because everybody could use that reminder to drop their shoulders and actually take a breath. So I remember that fairly well. I was reading a book this morning, and I had like a completely different topic in mind to talk about today. And then there was this part, it was like towards the end of the book. And I love that. I always love towards the end of the book when everybody, like everything's coming together, right? And it's making sense, and it's all, not that the whole book didn't make sense, but you get what I mean. Anyway, and there was a statement that she made, or a story that she shared, that really brought up a lot of stories in myself and a lot of, oh God, yes, this is what I need to share with the world today. And I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of what she was sharing, but she was talking about a time, I don't know when this was, but there was a time where there were like several monks murdered by other monks, which is like, whoa, right? And it was around the time that she and another, like a group of people were supposed to be sitting, or were going to sit with the Dalai Lama. And, you could tell everybody was just wanting to give him their condolences because of what had happened. And his response was like, thank you, obviously, thank you for the condolences, but this is why we practice. And instead of being really emotional or upset or whatever, which I'm sure he had lots of emotions because he is still human, but the truth is such a beautiful thing to find when something happens and you can say, yeah, that's shitty, right? Not great, but this is why we practice. This is why we practice. And that statement is a version of other things that I have been so grateful for over the past 2 years, especially. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a second. So what's funny is I do not remember that part of the story. I'm so glad. I'm so glad I didn't go forward, because I think that that's really beautiful. And I don't even remember exactly what book I'm referring to. I'm going to have to look that up. But for myself. But what I love about that is, again, one of the things you hear me talk about a lot is as we grow and we go through life, everything that we're learning and reading and re-encountering, we actually tend to have a different experience with it. And I think that's beautiful. Personally, that's one of my favorite parts about personal development and being open-minded and things like that, is that I get to experience some of the same things a new way a lot. And so in this, what I love, and one of the first things that comes to mind is that since I had to take a break from being so sick and that taking over so much of my life, I haven't been able to concentrate on reading in a long time. I can read my daily devotional and keep track of that. It's like the one that I have is actually probably 1 to 2 pages long. But even that's a little hard because my capacity has been so consumed by what my body needs and basically what I needed to not be doing and slow down so I could get the burnout to go away, to where I want to read. Like I desire to read, and it's just my system is not there yet. And I wanted to share that because I think it's powerful. Like I miss watching myself talk about this. I miss that because one of my most inspiring things that I would do for all my writing and my recording was every day I would read until I had like that spark moment of like aha, or a story popped up or something I wanted to share. So that's my reflection really on this first part of the video, where I'm explaining that story regarding the monks and what the Dalai Lama had to say. I think it's very beautiful. And that now, like as I'm listening, I'm thinking, this is why I send people to watch this episode. Again, I don't necessarily know right now what story I'm about to share, but it's like I can tell I'm uncomfortable. So let's find out. And I want to explain to you, I'm going to give you guys like some pretty detailed experiences, I believe, here, and of my own experiences, and why this is why we practice. Is just like at the end of the day, it's such a big and predominant statement that just, couldn't be more accurate. And to give you a little bit of info, like my hope is with this podcast and the rest of what we're about to talk about is that whether you're somebody who's super committed to the daily tasks and super committed and devoted to what you're doing, or you've been working to get to that place, maybe that's been a goal and you go back and forth, which a lot of us do until we finally get really in a good groove. No matter where you are in that self-commitment place of consistency, in order to make life simpler, that foundational piece, no matter where you are, I hope that this podcast and the rest of this podcast episode will, first of all, remind you that you're not alone. Second of all, remind you why you're doing it. And if you've not been doing it, this might be just the motivator that you need. Because I think that we are motivated a lot of times by like what we're supposed to be doing. Well, if I want this, I'm supposed to do this, and blah, blah, blah. Well, that doesn't really suit well or sit well with a lot of people. So I think the cool thing here is that when you come into a space, a lot, especially the online space, a lot of people fear that it's too saturated. There's too many people doing podcasts. There's too many coaches. There's too many blah, 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 right? So why would anybody listen to me? And what I think is beautiful about this moment, and I still haven't gotten really to, I'm pretty sure is a vulnerable thing that's about to come out here. But what's really beautiful about this moment is that this was 5 years ago. And if I flashed back to other videos that weren't podcast videos or other blogs from 5 years before that, so 10 years from now, I'm very confident in the fact that this is still a consistent part of my message, is consistency. The fact that I speak what I do and show up the way I do because I don't want others to feel alone in a way that I've felt alone in my own processes. That, again, it's so consistent. And when your message gets to be consistent for such a long period of time, what a beautiful space that is. Like, it makes me feel so proud and so confident, in what I'm doing, which is beautiful. Like I was actually saying right before we started filming, because I don't get nervous per se anymore doing recordings, but this is my first time doing my own in a studio without myself behind the camera, So watching this is making me go, okay, yeah, All right, we are. Our foundation is so solid, and I feel so good about that. And I know that, as I've said, before in the last few episodes, that foundation is what allowed me to continue to exist for 2 years of me having to take such a large step back for my health. The fact that I had built the foundation. Did I build it in the most healthy fashion? No, and that's what we talk about here. Did I do it in a way, though, that created what I needed to be sustainable? Yes. I just had to dissect parts of it and tweak it to make things work. But I believe that that's the whole point of this episode of This Is Why We Practice. So let's keep listening. Recently, I was talking to a client, and we were talking about how he started this new hobby of hunting, right? And he's like, the conversations with him about hunting are amazing, just because his thought process around it is so different. And he was saying, yeah, it's making me want to be more committed to my fitness routine, because I'm gonna walk up and down these hills and valleys and have to, if I kill a deer or an elk, like, I have to carry that son of a bitch out, and I want to be able to do that without harm or having to leave parts of the animal behind or whatever. And so it was a really cool experience, because I always love when we finally get down to a place where we can have a different type of motivator than what we're supposed to be doing. It's a deeper, more meaningful motivator. And that's one of those things that it fuels people in a different way, whether we want to admit it or not. Like, it's real pretty for us, every person in the planet, to just want to say out loud, oh yeah, well, I'm super committed, and just, I'll say I'm going to do something and I'm always going to do it. And the truth is, that's really not normally the case. Without a lot of trial and error, without a lot of ups and downs and things like that most of the time. But like, it's a rarity that someone's like, I'm making this commitment, and then like the moment they say that, from then on, they're committed, right? When we can find some of these more deeply rooted, more emotional motivators, then it just helps, right? What a beautiful share. So I remember this client in this conversation, and the thing is that I recently have had the same conversation with someone, which is beautiful. So when I talk about creating sustainable systems or habits in our lives, the conversation comes from a place of, when I say sustainable, unfortunately, like right now, everybody thinks I'm talking about like plastic water bottles and things like that, which, yes, that's part of the conversation, but not this one. It's more about like being able to find, like I said, his motivator is, I'm going to increase my fitness because hunting is important to me, and being able to kill whatever he kills in the mountain and be able to carry it back out was his motivator to stay on his fitness. And recently I have a client who, she really wants to travel all over the world and interview people. And she knows that most of the time when she travels, she gets really sick. And so, as we know that her traveling across the pond anywhere right now, and like the cost of that is not in the cards at the moment, unless, the universe delivers us it a different way. And so what do we do to stay true to that path and be able to continue on that path? It's find the motivator. So if your goal is to travel all the time, then, and you're like working towards that, maybe you're saving points, maybe you're saving money, like whatever it is. If you're able to then use that main goal and break it down into things that allow you to have really good daily habits to support that goal, that's going to be the why we practice aspect. That's going to be the foundation aspect that makes you actually reach the dream. So when I talk to people about where you are now versus where you want to be, and we have to figure out how to reverse engineer this gap here, this is very similar part of the conversation. It just really helps to remember and to be able to say, like, this is why we practice. Because the truth is, life will always happen, okay? Life will always happen. Things will go on that might throw you off course for a couple of days, a week, a month, a year. Obviously, the goal is to never have it be that long, but depending upon the circumstances, right? Like, we all have very different circumstances, and our circumstances sometimes change from hour to hour, day to day, right? And so being able to ebb and flow with that is extremely important. That's kind of the whole point of what I do and what I teach, is the ebb and flow of all of that. the ebb and flow of all of that is the piece where, we are able to deal basically and not be so thrown off that everything crumbles around us. Like, there's a lot to be said about people who don't work on building a foundation, because their whole existence...
You guys, it's Mac Man making an appearance. Oh boy. I saw him walk behind me earlier. My heart. So if I randomly start crying during this episode, it's because my baby is no longer with us, as you know, and he's just walking around. There is a thing. A lot of you knew Mac and Bonnie. They were in my content. They were in every video. They were involved in everything. I have a whole photo shoot with Bonnie. And so when they died, it's like a part of, not just part of my daily personal life, but it was like literally they were a part of everything. And so it's hard watching back old videos and old trainings and things like that, because they're in them a lot of times. As you know, Mac would always talk and grab my hand and all kinds of things. So he may make another appearance. We'll see.
Is like a house of cards, 100% like a house of cards. And so when, shit hits the fan, like, let's think about the stuff's flying at you, that house of cards is going to crumble, right? And that's not what we want. So we've talked a bit about the foundation, and there's an episode that I'll link below called The Sink versus the Well. And that one goes into great detail about how fixing the sink is a very small part of your problem if your well is cracked up and bullshit, right? Like, you need a good, sturdy well for the sink to even matter, right? So we always want to, like, do the pretty thing, when instead it's like, but what about what's under the surface? Or what about the surface, right? The foundation. It's the story of my life. I feel like I've said no more in the last 3 weeks or 2 weeks than I have in my entire life. For real, my neighbors probably think that I'm like the meanest mom alive. Anyway, so I had everything back to Iowa. I had this, whole situation. I mean, I had panic attacks because I was scared to tell people here, and I was like scared of what was going to happen and blah, 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 but still I knew I needed to go, right? So what that looked like was packing up all my shit. Well, what I did was I did the Marie Kondo method, and I got sorted through all of my stuff, because I had a 3-bedroom house that I had been living in for 2 or 3 years at the time, and I had accumulated quite a bit of shit, right? That happens.
Okay, so during this, I tell some stories about exactly what happened when I was coming back from Iowa, and utilize that as a story or an example of why we practice. Because when I was in Iowa and moved my whole life there, my whole world there, and I had I was a stepmom for a while, and these things, it put all the work I had done for the previous however many years really to test. And the way that I handled that, the way that I was while we were there, the way I was when I was trying to salvage the situation, the way I was when I left, all of that, I can say 3 or 4 years before that, I would have handled wildly different. I would have also had complete and utter moments of, I would not have been okay when I came back. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't great when I came back, but I remember saying to my therapist, Amber, that I needed and wanted to process all of it, as much as I could of it now, so that I didn't have to, it didn't pop up in 10 years. And me being like, wow, okay, I never dealt with that, which was my old habit. My old habit was to just head down, do the work, go do a bunch of projects and don't process, And so even the really beautiful part about where I was then versus where I am now is that even as I've moved through in this version of Jamie in 2020, I truly was this. This was authentic. This was real. This is what I was doing. And then now, 5 years later, the version that I am now, it's the same rules. And that's kind of what I thought I was going to find when I'm going through. The rules are the same. The thing that you need to remember is, or realize, is that when we build that foundation and we are dedicated and committed to continuing to grow that part of us, whether it's our purpose as a human or a coach or a mom or a dad or a friend or whatever it is, you guys know for me, I encompass that whole conversation in like who I am as a human being is wildly important to me, making sure that that's of integrity and of what lines up for me. And so when that's what's happening, it just keeps getting better. It can just keep getting bigger and expand more and become easier and deeper. And that's what I think this whole process for me the last 2 years have been excruciating and terrifying and frustrating. And it's deepened everything so much. So for me to watch this version of myself, it's funny because a lot of people go through what they refer to as like their spiritual awakening or whatever they want to call it. And that's never been what I've called it. That's never been what happened to me. That's not what happened to me. I was placed in front of a crossroads like a few really intense times in my late 20s and early 30s. And I chose paths that went along with what I believe the most in, and it's just expanded and deepened in a beautiful way. So it's not like I had this one moment, because I don't believe that exists, honestly. Like, do I think we have pivotal moments where like, wow, okay, I see where I could be changing things and we start doing things in a different direction? Absolutely. But do I think that it's just like one pow moment and then like everything's different? That's not true, because we have to do the work. And that's what this entire episode is about. This is what my whole life is about. This is what everything I've ever told you on the internet's about. Let's be real, is the fact that it takes self-awareness, consistent reflection, and checking back in with what you're doing realistically, how it's working, where you're going, all those things. And then continuing to keep yourself committed to the long game of whatever that is for you. So for me, it used to look way different. Like I'd assume Jamie in 2020 was probably still like really going after the 20K months and was probably really like, that's the goal. If you're not doing that, you're failing. When I wasn't even hitting 10K months, but like that's what the internet was saying, blah, blah, blah. But it was, the voice in my head was still mine, but it was deeply influenced by other things. And I think that's something drastic. That's a difference between me then and me now. Happened during this 2-year hiatus for my health. It was not I didn't want to do it, but we did it. Was that none of this is about anybody else's definition of anything anymore. Like, it truly isn't. And me and all these videos, these past videos, she didn't think it was. So she wasn't lying to you. But that's the thing I love about growth, is when you're able to be wildly self-aware, you can look back and say, I wasn't lying. I wasn't pretending. That's just the depth that I knew of it then. And I think that's beautiful.
And I sat there and thought about it, and I was like, how cool is it that I was able to give myself that space? Work what I needed to, do what I needed to do. And like, this is why we practice.
This is why we practice. There it is. It's so funny because I think I've probably said that a million times since I recorded this this episode talking about that topic, because I remember when I heard that, it was like, whoop, something shifted, just a change in the language, a change in the understanding. And what this is talking about was the space I gave myself when I came back from Iowa. I moved into the perfect apartment that I'd never seen before I got there. It was covered in boxes. I didn't have a couch, all that stuff. And so with that experience, that was one of the first times I did what I just explained that I did for this past 2 years. I paused a lot. I cried a lot. I let myself be a blob a lot because I needed to. And I think I'm about to go into how freaking scary that is. Hold on.
This is why we practice. This is what I kept thinking. And then this morning I read that and I was like, yes, that's why. And the cool part is, part of the evolution was in the past, especially that whole year that I was like not, towards the end of that year of all the healing and like doing less than I'd ever done before.
Doing less than I'd ever done before. That's entertaining. It's so funny because at this point I was still working, oh my Lord, obnoxious amounts of hours. The thing that I thought I was doing less was because a lot of it I was doing on my couch. I was doing it in my bed. I was whatever. But the thing that I learned this past year, and why I shifted the conversation to Operation B, is because I really truly believed I was doing less. And in a lot of ways, I guess I was. But my brain was never not making lists. I was never not making diagrams of what I would put where and how I would organize this and it was constant. So like, it's cute that I thought I was resting.
I was really fucking hard on myself mentally about not doing enough. Like, it's already a thing that I've always had to deal with, but I was really hard on myself about, I'm not doing enough. What the fuck? There's something wrong with me. I should be doing more. I should be making more. I should be blah, 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 right? All the things. That voice was really loud in my head. And so the cool part is, again, the evolution is this past week, which I normally in the past would have done exactly what I just described to you, even though I was so in such a shitty space that I couldn't even focus. And I would have been no use to anyone, really. It would have been me, not very responsible of me to try to coach anyone during that. What a great space for me to be able to not be mad at myself or not be mean to myself. And instead I was understanding, like, this is it. You know, this is where we're at, and that's fine. Like, I show up for everyone when they need me, and I will always show up for everyone when they need me. This is not changing that, you know? And so it was really cool. It was really cool to see that different part of the evolution again.
So I remember this time when I really truly believed that I was doing so much less and still showing up for everyone. The difference was, a big piece of the difference between then and now is that I've learned since, which I've talked to you a bit about, the enmeshment that I never knew was a thing. I didn't know that you didn't act that way with people. Like, I don't know everything about you. Like, that's wild. I thought I needed to know everything about you and be so intertwined so I could be the most supportive human you've ever had. And so when I would say here very innocently and very genuinely, like, I show up for people the way I'm supposed to show up for people, and it's okay if then I have all this downtime, which is true. The thing that I wasn't being honest about during this time, and it wasn't intentional, was how sick I was. Like, thank God I lived in a place where I could easily get food delivered. Talk about a mind shift when you moved. I moved out to Defiance in the middle of nowhere where I live now, and what would happen is I'd get so caught up in none of my own personal needs would be important enough for me to stop what I was doing and eat food or have food, you know, prepared. But I was smack dab in the middle of the county, you know, so I could get all the things I needed. And so I could have food in 10 minutes if I needed it. I didn't have to think about myself as much. And then I moved into the house we're in now, and I had to. And so the game changed, and it really pushed me into caring for myself truly in a way that I had never reached, never let myself reach.
This is why we practice, right? Because you get to a place of being able to allow yourself grace and to turn down those voices that have always been so loud for forever in your life. You get to that place and, well, look, think about it. You get to that place that came from self-awareness, mindfulness practices, being present, taking the time to slow down, reprogramming your automatic thoughts. All of that stuff is stuff I practice for years and years and years and years. And it keeps turning up and uncovering something else. Well, it's like a constant freaking devotion that I've had for 5-6 years. And this is why we practice. Every time you see yourself in these situations and then being different and better and whatever it might be.
I think this is a great place for me to wrap up a little bit. So this is the reason why I do share this conversation with people, is because, yes, I took a break for 2 years. You didn't see me talk very much for 2 years. It was very sporadic. I didn't go places. I still am not really doing a whole bunch. Honestly, I'm starting to. We're getting there. I'm like, the last couple of weeks have been hard physically. So I'm easing in. And if I would not have had the ability to build this foundation and the self-awareness and the ability to be really honest with myself and speak up, and like I said, is it much more evolved at this point? Sure. But then I was at least aware of it and I had something to go off of. And so because I built that foundation and that trust and people knew what they could expect from me, for that 2-year window, I still paid all my own bills with my business. I didn't get new clients. I didn't need them. I had existing clients that paid my bills. I did everything they needed. They didn't want for nothing from me. And the main thing for me, the hardest part for me was my personal relationships, my family and friends, and me patching the holes in my boat where I never even realized my energy would just immediately flow out. And that's now what I'm practicing. That's what I'm learning now and practicing. So imagine the ability for me to go beyond that moving forward, for the ability for me as 5 years from now that I know this, how beautiful will it be for me to honestly be able to say that I can love and support and care for people, and it doesn't rip me apart at all, not even a little bit. Woo! That's where we're headed. And that's what I hope that you get from this. My whole purpose has always been the same, of the fact that I want to make sure that there's always an evolution being shared. There's never just the highlight reel. There's never just the, oh, this happened and the next day I was great. Like, no, that's not real. That's not how it goes. So if there's anything you took from this, I think it's pretty fun. So I think that if you're new here, old redheaded long-haired mermaid Jamie, there she is saying the words. And then if you've been here for a long time, you probably remember this conversation and my wolf painting in the background. And I'm looking at this going, oh man, I really need to get another English ivy plant because there's one in the background and that one died. Anyways, so I love this. I think that, it's a beautiful recommendation, especially since I'm so regularly reminding people the importance of reflection for your own self and your continuous growth and grounding. So I hope that you got something good from this video. As always, thank you for being here. If you enjoyed the message, please share this with somebody that you love or that you think could benefit from it. If you have not yet left a review for the podcast, we appreciate that. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to Operation B, the podcast. To support this message and to support the show, please make sure that you like, follow, and share the podcast wherever you enjoy listening. And be sure to leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you for being here and see you next time.